And Phillip of DG Phillip and Associates, and welcome to another Workforce Wednesday. Today we're going to dive into learning and development inside the numbers. This is part two. Last week we did part one, and I shared with you in part one the first two important aspects of implementing a good learning and development strategy in your workplace. The first one was timing. It's a major key in retaining and applying what's being taught. So timing is important. Number two, people don't get to determine the things they want to learn or need to learn or need to change. They're dictated to what they're going to learn and what needs to change. So today we're going to start with number three. There'll be 3 to 5 today, and then we'll finish up this series. We don't retain much. We really don't. We fall back to our habits, our patterns, those kinds of things that are in our brain or in our actions. What we know, where we're comfortable. Well, in different surveys, it's been determined that high school graduates entering into their freshman year of college, they've already forgotten about 60% of everything that they were taught, or what they supposedly learned while they were in school. In addition to that, if the new information learned isn't applied, people will forget at least 75% of what was taught in less than 7 days. So the week that we spend learning oftentimes goes for naught. People will fall back on their default settings in short order. If what we learn isn't applied while holding one another accountable to what was taught, no new habits can be formed, and therefore behavior doesn't change. And that's really what we're looking for. If behavior doesn't change, then you have no gain from the time and money invested in attempting to learn something that will pay off in the workforce. Number 4, what can you do to change things? How can I make this better? How can I impact my people, the workforce, with the learning that we're trying to accomplish? Well, everything's getting faster, and all the people claim to be very busy with really little to no time to do anything other than what's already on their plate. Well, in this case, you're going to always get what you always have gotten, and that's not going to change. And then frustration sets in, distrust begins to pile up, and it just becomes a messy workplace. Unless you change the target and your goals, you're not going to hit the bullseye. So slow down, ask questions, do a lot of question asking. Now, I know if you're not used to that, people are going to start to say, I wonder why he's asking so many questions. Do an employee audit. Bring a third party in if you need to. Find out what's bothering them first before you try to do something new or solve a problem that has been going on forever and ever since you can remember. Well, many times the rank and file see the problems from a different perspective than we do. And that perspective is, perhaps, if the manager wouldn't have said this or changed that, we wouldn't have had this problem. If they would have asked me, I would have told them what they needed. Many won't volunteer this. So it's the decisions and choices of those leading or supervising that can at times cause the problems in our workforce. If things don't get better, once again, the leadership decides that our managers need leadership training. Well, most of our workforce, they're really not going to take learning and development seriously until those who are making the decisions demonstrate the value of learning and developing right alongside with them. In other words, be the change you want and invite those whom you believe need to change to be included in the process and what they're learning. If you're the change that you're trying to drive into your workforce, then they're going to be more receptive to follow. Number 5, learn the core, C-O-R-E, and apply the core every day. Much like physical exercise, if I strengthen my core, my abs, my back, my hips, if I strengthen these components, it's going to reach into all the other extremities and make me a stronger person. Well, we need to individualize and make the experience relevant to real work situations. We have to give them immediate feedback and weekly coaching sessions. It's like a washing machine, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. That's how we start to change habits. Well, the Pareto principle, which is always true, and I think all of you are familiar with that we're 20% of the issues causing 80% of the problems. Once we identify what those 20% are that's causing 80% of the problems, then we need to immediately address the issues in our learning and our development process. These are items that I'm sure your workforce can identify with. For example, the problem of poor communication isn't just an issue for the entry level and the frontline managers, but yet what we do is frontline training, better supervision, better management. Communication is the number one cause for distrust in most all organizations or institutions. The communication ball gets dropped in a lot of ways through poor instructions, misinformation, interpretation, lack of follow through, poor SOPs, assumptions, and really a lack of clear expectations. And those are just a few of the reasons for poor communication. People are afraid to, when you say to them, did you get what I just said? Do you understand? Oh, yeah, I did. But then once you leave, they're asking somebody, hey, I didn't get it. That shows a lack of trust. We can shorten the feedback loop when applied and tried in real time. The best form of learning is a guided learning experience where you don't just tell me, but you show me and let me do it. And then I'm going to retain that more often than not. In other words, telling, showing, and demonstrating, and then inviting the learner to do, then evaluate and assess the process with that individual. Rinse and repeat again. Include your team in the learning and doing process. Personalize the content. And I know that takes a while and I know that's cumbersome, but it's the best thing you can do. Personalize the content. Don't have a cookie cutter. And then adapt it to meet each employee's needs, learning styles, and their delivery method. It's a lot of work, but it'll pay off. Provide ongoing support and regular, consistent feedback. And finally, develop a peer-to-peer learning process and system. More than 50% of your employees would rather ask somebody in the workforce because they're familiar with and comfortable and they don't mind showing their vulnerability. So use the people in your workforce to teach one another and to show one another the new skill they need to learn. Most employees don't want to get on a computer and look up the answers and try to apply what they've learned. A guided experience with another peer is the best way to help them learn. When this is incorporated into the learning process, you will also improve employee-to-employee relationships and build a stronger team. I call that workships, friendships at work, developing those teams who trust one another. So find out who likes to teach, who likes to train, and or share what they know. Let them share what they know. Put together a process to which they can incorporate their wisdom. They could be some of your best trainers and team builders. If you look at these 5 principles that we've stated over the last two Wednesdays, and you start implementing these, you will find that your learning and development process will be improved dramatically.